thanks for joining. So I'm Alex Brindle. I head up the digital development capability at Wickes. Thanks very much for coming along to talk about navigating digital product development for great CX. So you might be wondering, what does that actually mean? So when I was asked to come along and speak today, I really wanted to try and focus more on kind of the actual building of the digital products and the processes and give you a bit of insight into what kind of I and the teams do at Wickes. So yeah, I'd really welcome any questions at the end. So before I carry on, a bit of a refresher of Wickes. Hopefully you've heard of us. We've been around for about 50 years, since the first Wickes store opened in Manchester. So we've been around for some time. We're a home improvement retailer. We split our revenues across 3 distinct areas. We have a strategy for our trade, that's Trade Pro, and that's sort of local tradespeople, where they get access to a membership scheme. We have our DIY retail, kind of core segment, and then we also have a design and installation business, so kitchens, bathrooms, big, major improvement projects. And our purpose really is to make the nation feel house proud. So we've got a large physical presence, around 229 stores at last count, and good news is most of those we invest a lot of time and effort in, and about over 75% of our stores are in a brand new kind of format, and we're opening new stores at the same time across the country as well. We've got just under 8,000 engaged colleagues. And the Trade Pro business I mentioned, just recently we signed up our sort of millionth Trade Pro member, so a really, really growing stream of tradespeople across the country that want value, want access to our discount and product ranges. We've got 3,000 installer teams that are kind of delivering and landing in people's homes, those major improvement projects. And as per our 2023 annual report, we take a revenue of circa 1.6 billion. But importantly, we are a digitally led business, and sort of circa 2/3 of our customers start their journey digitally with us. And we have a number of areas that they come for around convenience, certainty, value, help and advice, and delivery. So what do I hope you can take away today? Well, really, 3 things. Insight into our ways of working. Perhaps some of what I say is going to be familiar to you, perhaps it will be new, but hopefully either way it will kind of go back to your organisation and have something to sort of talk about and think about. Ignite some discussions in your business. Maybe if you are familiar with this, what stakeholder are you? How important is it to you? And my main hope is really it's a nudge to go and talk to your digital teams or technology teams, however you're kind of structured. And I guess the last one is really think about how influential digital development can be. It can be quite siloed, a bit techie, a bit the kind of people in the corner. I'm not a techie, so no technical questions at the end, please. But really, where does this feature in your business? How important investment priority is it that you're continually getting out really compelling digital products to your customers? And customers have various touch points, and for Wickes, we've got a lot, whether it's social, physical, anything and everything, we've got a lot of touch points. And really, the digital product and development roadmaps really need to understand all those touch points, but really understand how cohesive they need to be. It's important that they have a real cohesive experience for the customer, so that the customer is on one channel, somewhere else, it feels really natural, and it's not different, it's not complicated, no separate logins, no separate this, that, and the other. It's really as cohesive as you can make it as multi-channel. And also, interestingly, how you approach the structure of your teams and how you organise it within your business needs to reflect those touch points. So, for example, I don't just look after digital products and kind of online and web. I also have focus and resource in our in-store digital products that our colleagues use, so the operations of the business as well. And I'll come on to that in my example later. And I think really having product ownership across physical and in-store, if it's relevant, or any other touch point that's relevant for you, I think is really important, so that it's not siloed, it's a really kind of collaborative way of working. So perhaps unusually, I'm going to start my example by looking at that internal customer experience, and that of our stores. So all of our stores have handheld devices with a number of digital applications on it. And historically, Wickes, as I said, been around a long time, very our click and collect proposition was very manual, paper-based, awkward, you had to file it, you had to sign for stuff, not modern, not great. So we started to have a look at how we could modernise that experience. So we launched an initiative to digitise that process and build on a growing suite of kind of in-store digital products that we wanted to introduce. And as everyone who works in marketing knows, we love an acronym, so we came up with COPS, our collection order picking system, which was kind of the first foray into kind of looking really hard at our click and collect proposition. And the conclusion of this was, yes, we got loads of internal efficiencies, the staff loved it, but really importantly, allowed us to move to a 30-minute kind of click and collect proposition. We were confident we could serve that, we tested it, we got feedback. So that kind of set the groundwork. And in some organisations, a bit of a traditional IT project. You know, you had kind of stores, you had hardware. That wasn't the case for us. We did work with them. We worked very collaboratively with technology teams and infrastructure teams to deliver it, and also retail operations. So a really kind of good example of our first foray into kind of the in-store customer. But then we think, okay, 30-minute click and collect proposition. How do we then market that to our customers? What are the experiences? You know, our customers are actually quite familiar with click and collect. Obviously, it's very common in lots of different businesses. And we operate a mixture of fulfillment channels at Wickes. So if you order from us, you might get your stock delivered from a local store, but you might not know it. It will come as a delivery. It could be for a national DC, an infrastructure. It could be drop ship. It's very expensive for us. So we sort of set about a bit of a hypothesis about how do we really build on the work we've done in the stores and bring it online. And really transferring all of those customers into a more profitable channel for us through click and collect. So that's where we sort of started from. Online testing, multivariant testing, it's relatively new at Wickes. We're still bedding that in properly into our customer experience sort of program online. And I think when I started to think of this, I was like, this is great, you know, how do we do it? But it actually puts more emphasis and more focus on the digital development teams to really think about how do you present that online, but how is it being operated in stores? It's also worth mentioning at the time we started to look at this online experience that Google Optimize was sunsetting, and many of you may have used that or know businesses that used it. So we also went into the market to look at a new kind of A/B testing experience experiment platform. And we integrated a new solution with a partner called Good Growth, who we've been using for a long time and consulting with, about really focusing on that online journey. So we kind of had three kind of building blocks. Data, don't need to tell you how important data is, we know it is, but really collaborating with the team, starting to get some KPIs and metrics about what do we want to measure. We also implemented some quantitative and qualitative research into how do customers shop with us, why do they fail on click and collect, what's their kind of feedback. So we did that online, did it in store, and really we kind of 4 emerging areas came up. That was priority, how important is it, how quick can I get it with the urgency, and also the practicality, how can you get it to me quickly. So all of this was kind of put into the melting pot in our sort of program. And then test and learn, so we started then really going to town with lots of incremental tests. I've got some visuals on the next slide of what that kind of looks like from a Wickes perspective. But we had lots of iterative cycles of building and interrogating data about customer behavior and how they interacted with our different experiments. Not everything worked, we didn't know everything. The cliche of fail fast was definitely kind of living and breathing in Wickes at the time. But we got a good grounding and insight from it. And just as an example, this is a sort of snapshot across some of our sort of digital journeys where we sort of start to inject how you can get products from us. So CTA messaging, we looked at language, does free mean anything, is time important, how do we display that in our mobile journey, PDP, so where should it be placed? We ran loads of experiments and iterations, quite minor in some cases, quite surprisingly. Add to basket, kind of once you get to those key steps of your journey, what are the options and the change between how do we shift you from checking out on an expensive, maybe it's £7 kind of home delivery product into click and collect, but obviously you've got to go to store to get it, but we did loads in that space around the wording and placement. And for example, around price, there is a basic paid message versus click and collect, but tweaks on how we did it had drastic actions. The volumes and sales that we get through click and collect, just making these changes was really, really surprising on how it can give you sort of business benefit and commercial benefit. So if you do have the capability for various testing, don't underestimate tone, wording, placement, button color, stuff that sounds really, when you say it out loud, but it has a massive, massive difference to what the customers might engage with you and how they might ultimately convert. So from that, what did we learn? So we learned a few things. We did see an actual shift. We saw over 5% shift from those that were going to go down a fulfillment route into click and collect. So a massive kind of profit saving exercise for us and an annual cost saving. And again, on our sort of numbers from our online business, that was really big for us. Interestingly, our voice of customer, so that's our kind of survey and pulse check with what a customer is saying about us. That wasn't actually specifically part of our KPIs. It was a real sort of fringe benefit. Obviously, we want the customer's positivity score to be high, but that was a fringe benefit. Did drive additional revenue on top of the kind of cost saving. And people-wise, it was a real true collaboration. So like I said at the start, thinking about how you work and structure of your teams, starting to sort of look at those ways of working, not just the technology of how you're doing it and what you're doing it. It also meant that any future tests that we did went smoother. Still had bumps in the road, but they went smoother. So, for me, got lots of things on plan, and I'm like, this is great, and I talk to my UX teams, and you get all this data, but I've got loads of plates to spin, like I'm sure many of you have. Different priorities, different things we've committed to doing, different things we're investing in. So I thought, how do I just build all this stuff? How do I actually, we get these positive tests, and how do I then put it into our development backlogs really succinctly with a high priority amongst everything else? So I needed to think about the strategic program and the roadmaps. And at Wickes, like I said, we are a digital-led organisation, and I've got areas on plan such as apps. So we have a consumer app, a trade app. We've got payments going on. We've got activity going on in our kitchens business. Lots of new digital products coming along the line. And that's on top of the kind of always-on continuous improvement. So let alone the challenger testing, we've got loads of things going on around SEO visibility. What's Google's recommendations that we need to keep up with? So lots of different plates to spin. And the challenger program was just like another thing that we had to so more work, basically. So how to go about tackling that? I think evolving the ways of working was really critical. So depending on the nature of your business and how you're structured, I had to get the UX teams a lot closer and experienced teams to the digital development capability. So some practical examples of how we did that is opened up to all our prioritization sessions. So actually getting more people around the table that weren't involved in the conversation, and they had a real vested interest in what we were doing. And like I said, it has a habit of working in a bit of a siloed, detached way when you kind of maybe have UX teams, experience, proposition, technical development. So bringing all of that together was one really simple example. So maybe have a think about how does that work, what's relevant for you and your organisation. And for those that use Jira and Confluence and all the lovely dull kind of workflow tools, I actually got people using Jira to improve workflow in the end. And in my organisation, that was a massive win because we were using Trello over here and this over there and a spreadsheet over here. And again, it just meant that we consolidated all that, we cut through that, and we had teams far more energized and far more engaged to work together. It wasn't all plain sailing though, so as I said, we had to kind of think about what worked, what didn't work. Ruthless prioritization, that's the phrase I use all the time. What's one, what's important, what's got the highest value, what is that metric that we're measuring it against? And then really budgets and resources were re-evaluated. So larger strategic projects versus rapid release. So I have a bit of a nominal rule that we have like an 80-20 split. So we'll be working on large, shiny features 80% of the time, and then around 20% of my resource and development budget will be going roughly into kind of continuous improvement, always-on type learning programs. And I think that's really important in your organization, like I said at the start, is how much of an investment priority is it for you? Where are you splitting the really valuable funds that the business are giving you to enable this, because it's not cheap. So what would be the 3 things that I'd leave you with? Say, haven't got a lot of time, you can ask me all the questions at the end. I've built in loads of time for questions. I think really it's about having an ambitious digital roadmap. And what I mean by that is it has to be adaptive. How do you move from more of the annual budget, 12-month plans, and to my slide previous, I mentioned quarterly planning. Could you move that into a more agile, forward-thinking 3-month quarter? That's what I do, and we've sort of started to implement. The reasons for that is that we get ahead of the curve, we can get our engineering teams a bit more involved, we can get our architecture teams more involved, but also it means that we're constantly delivering. So we release every kind of few weeks across multiple platforms, across apps and across our web channels throughout the year. Ensure you engage and include your wider teams. It's really, really important that if you have the capability, or even go away and have a conversation with some of those broader teams, how do you get them into your conversation? How do you get them into your sort of governance process that you might be running to deliver these digital products? And finally, when planning for your budgets, how are you approaching being both flexible and balanced against those strategic and continuous improvement products? Thank you very much. I'd love to take any questions that you might have.